Thank you for watching this video. My name is Satheesh. I'm from Datameer. I work as a solutions engineer for Datameer, where we help people or organizations to get access to the Hadoop data in a self-service environment. I'm here with Sanosh from EFY, where we are going to discuss about the whole journey of data and BI and Hadoop and anything that comes in data form.
Okay, so can you just give us an overview of what data analytics is all about?
So data analytics is a stream that's there for a quite long time, right? So if you look at the whole history of data has been very pivotal in a lot of decision-making process throughout the history. So the only thing that changed over the period of time is how people interact with the data and how frequent they get access to the data. So that's the only thing that's changed. Imagine 50 years back, we would have like a big server room where we have all the servers and the data kept there. And when somebody wants to get access to the data, there are sophisticated people who go and write it in the ledger and give it back to you. So that's the way the whole information consumption started. And eventually what we've seen happen is there were tools which can help you to interact with those data storage environments, which can be databases, which puts it in a structured format. And there were engines which came on top of those databases where you could write a SQL like a query and to get access to the data. Still, the challenge was only the people who know SQL could write it. And eventually at the next phase came the technologies like reporting solutions, to name a few, like Business Objects, Cognos, and Microsoft. Those vendors came up with technologies where they've given a user interface for you to interact with the data which is sitting inside the database in the backend, which made the time that taken for the data to access very low and very frequent. Users can get access to it. And the second generation we talk about are the discovery solutions, like there are many in the market like ClickView, Tableau, Microsoft Power BI, which helps end users to reduce the dependency on the IT team to get access to the data and analyzes it. So what we are seeing now at Datameer and Gartner and other analysts is the third generation of BI coming in place, which not just makes the data information access easy to the users, but handle the complexity of the data and the large volume of scale of the data as well. And Hadoop being in the forerunning front run here, where Hadoop helps you to store not just the structured data that we commonly see like CRMs and the ERPs of the world. We could take data that's coming from devices and social media, pollution data, geospatial data, all those data that we haven't considered to use in the mainstream can now be combined with your mainstream data like the ERPs, and Hadoop provides and facilitates a platform and a framework for you to store and compute those structured and unstructured data. And where we come in and Datameer is make that Hadoop ecosystem easy for the end users rather than to deal with all the complexity of the Hadoop ecosystem.
Okay, who all can use the Hadoop ecosystem?
Hadoop ecosystem, the real beneficiary, ideal beneficiary should be all the business users. But at this point of time, because of the complexities introduced in the Hadoop ecosystem, it's in the hands of few. I would say if you want to get access to the Hadoop ecosystem, you should be very strong in terms of certain programming languages. Like Hadoop has multiple ways of multiple programming languages like Scoop and Flume to extract the data and store it into a Hadoop ecosystem. And then we have ways that we can interact with Hadoop to read the data. You have MapReduce, Spark, Python scripts, and even Flink and other things coming up as well. So there are a variety of ways that you can talk to the Hadoop ecosystem to ingest data as well as to retrieve data. So that makes it a bit complex for a layman to get access to the Hadoop ecosystem. So once you have those complex programming knowledge in the Hadoop ecosystem, then you will be able to use it at this point of time. So that is where Datameer comes in place and say like, we want to push the boundaries a little more and say how do we give end users access to the Hadoop ecosystem without knowing all this complex programming. So what we have done is we built the product around the most commonly known user interface, which is spreadsheet. And we put the spreadsheet interface on top of the Hadoop file system so that the users can read the Hadoop file system through the spreadsheet interface, do their transformation, cleansing of data similar to the way that you do it in a spreadsheet, and reap benefit out of the Hadoop ecosystem.
Okay. With this ecosystem, you have use cases. Can you just throw some light on that?
Correct. So one of the challenges that we face in the Hadoop ecosystem, the customers are like, most of the time Hadoop, since because of the technical complexity involved in it, it's seen as a science project. So most of the time it stays at the IT department and lives at the IT department. So one of the way that we could take this Hadoop to the next level is defining use cases, right? Rather than focusing and starting a project in Hadoop as a science project, start a Hadoop project as a use case driven project. It's going to be a bit tough because you got to get a mind share from different business units, but then once you identify what are the different business challenges or the use cases you want to address, and then you go back and identify where the data sources are coming from. Say for example, customer churn analysis, right? The way that you could do a customer churn in a banking or a telco, for example, is there are data across. Telco has a lot of information in terms of the browsing history, because you use the telco's broadband. That is pre-unstructured data that goes into the web server logs. That has information of which websites my customers are visiting. And then you look at the call center data. When you call a customer support, they have collecting a lot of data. That's really not a structured data. The data is sitting in the switches and routers. And then you have your CRM data, which is structured in the environment. Once you combine all this information together to understand whether my customers are visiting my competitors' websites, at the same time have some kind of a call log with me for unsatisfactory service, and whether they are looking at my customers' product portfolios, competitors' product portfolio, then it becomes obvious for you, any customer who falls in multiple of these categories is going to churn from you. So once you identify the most commonly identified patterns a churned customer took, and then apply that pattern into the existing customer base, we can identify who are all the possible customers who may churn out of me in a very quicker time, and then I can proactively go and provide value-added service to them, or improve their customer satisfaction and try to retain them. So in this case, the use case is a pivotal point, and data and everything will supplement the use case. When you take this approach, the adoption in the organization is go big higher, because it's all ROI driven. It's all really visible business benefits, rather than a science project where we try to dump in a lot of data and trying to make sense out of the data.
Okay. So who can a layman get introduced? How can a layman get introduced to analytics, such as this scale?
So at this scale, it depends upon the different technologies that we talked about, right? The first generation, the second generation BIs have already provided a lot of user interfaces, which helps layman. So I wouldn't even call them as a layman. So layman is a very vague terminology, right? So what is very essential for somebody to get access to the information and data is what is that they want to know. That's a very key point. And what is the data types they are trying to access, right? So that business knowledge and the knowledge of the data is very important, and no, there's no substitute for it. There's no technology substitute for it. So if I am trying to understand, I need to know what are all the key questions I'm going to ask. Once you know the questions that you're going to ask, the UIs like in the first generation, second generation, or even in Datameer, we help the customers we facilitate them to get access to the data that will answer their questions. But what very essential is the layman in our terms should know what questions he is thinking of to get answers. So that's a basic criteria, I would say.
Okay. So what would you like to say for the next generation of data analytics experts?
So the next generation of beginners, I can say, rather than experts, the beginners who wanted to get into the data analytics space as such. This is a field that is going to change the whole world, right? Because ERPs at one point of time was so pivotal in terms of operationalizing and improve the productivity. But now everybody is on the same mark, right? Everybody has some way of data collected. Now the next thing is, how do we get a competitive edge from my competitor? And data is your fuel. So like my CEO said, data is the new oil. So oil determines the world economy, right? So data is the new oil. So anybody who has this more information, or get access into the more data that they have, and find the insights that your competitors are not finding today, that's going to put you in the front running position. So data analytics is going to be a very good stream to adopt as for for a really young generation who are coming into the computer science as a stream, I would say. So I would say anybody who wants to get into data have the basic fundamentals. To start with the basics, understand databases, how the data storage works. Even though we are talking about Hadoop at this stage, any skills that you learn from a data storage environment, from a RDBMS or a OLAP environment will be very helpful, even though we are not going to deal it in the later stage, primarily because RDBMS teaches you what is the data. What is a data point, how the data points are stored and coexist together and work with the rest of the data points in the organization. So I would say learning basic database concepts and understanding a little bit of SQL will help as well in terms of querying a data. That not from a technology point of view, but knowing the infrastructure or knowing the whole ecosystem of understanding data, working with the data. And then coming back to the Hadoop ecosystem, yes, at this point of time, the need in the market is really technical, competent people who could write programming like MapReduce and Pythons and R and all those predictive modeling kind of stuff. But yes, that is what the market needs now. At least for the next 3 to 4 years, that will be in demand. That's one of the reasons that we as a Datameer as a company were trying to help people to substitute the programming knowledge with a user interface. But we are one company at this point of time. So eventually there will be more companies trying to address this solution, and still that gap will bridge slowly, and there is a lot of potential for young generation who are getting out of college and into data science or Hadoop ecosystem to learn those programming languages like MapReduce and any of the programming interface into the Hadoop ecosystem.
All right. Thank you, Gaurav.
You're welcome.